Welcome back. We have Dhananjay Sinha now joining us. He's director at Systematix Group. Dhananjay, hi, good morning. Thanks a lot for joining us. The news of the morning is on Bharti Airtel. The promoters are buying stake from Singtel. It's a stock which has done well, has been a sort of an outperformer. But what would be your approach here?
So the thing is, we have been, this is a stock that we have been positive about for some time. I think the stock has been doing fairly well. I think there can be some reaction to this news, but I think that will be more short term. So if there is any correction, I would sort of buy into this.
Okay. Dhananjay, good morning. The other stock I wanted to ask you about was RBL Bank. It's had a big run. I mean, it's up 25% for the week. And, our colleague Nimesh was just telling us about how College Retirement Fund has bought about 45 lakh shares. Not just that, earnings have been improving. They've added some good names on their board as well. Is this a stock or is this a space that you would like to be in?
So generally, we have been underweight on banks, and with respect to RBL, the stock had actually corrected quite a bit. I think at the peak it was trading about 700 rupees. So there has been a big fall, almost like 85, 90%. So at this juncture, generally there has been a upswing with respect to the banking stocks, and Bank Nifty has gone up by almost like 24%. I think the mid-cap banks are catching up. I would avoid, because I'm underweight on banks, I would avoid the name that you just mentioned. So, so it's an avoid. I would not really participate in this particular upswing that is happening. One doesn't know. This can be fairly volatile.
So, okay, fair enough. So maybe just a trading kind of a move. Sorry, Dhananjay, you're saying that you're underweight banks in general, not
Yes.
just this group.
Right.
Okay. That's a bit of a, an anti-consensus kind of view, right? I mean,
Yes.
most expect banks to be doing
Yes.
very well. Could you explain that? Why don't you like that space? Yeah.
Couple of things. So the thing is, the space has actually done very well last year. So there was almost like a 40-50% rally as far as the PSU banks are concerned. This year, the markets have been fairly checkered, and the Bank Nifty has actually swung from something like 40,000 plus to 20, 30, 32 something, and it's sprung back to 38 something at this juncture. We examine this is largely because there is a certain increase in the multiplier. If you look at the Bank Nifty, price to book has increased from 2.4 or 2.3 to 2.6, 2.7 levels. So it's kind of valuation rise. But if you look at the banking sector results, our thesis has been that banks will struggle with respect to their margins and business growth. We are seeing considerable amount of competition as far as corporate lending is concerned. Everybody is actually focusing a lot on retail lending, uncollateralized lending, credit cards, business banking, etc. So banks are finding it difficult to really increase the lending rates and in the yields on advances. Whereas you also see that the cost of fund is rising because the liquidity is actually drying out. We know that the lab balance as percentage of deposit has fallen from 5.4% at the peak to 0.5%. So that's actually pushing up the deposit costs. So that margin pressure is happening despite rising interest rates. The general view is that typically banks should actually see higher margins, which is not happening. Third thing is that if you look at the asset quality matrix amongst large banks that we have seen in even smaller banks, there is a rise in slippages, which is considerable, despite the fact that there has been a continued decline in NPA ratio. So I think these are concerns that I have. So while the Bank Nifty has rallied along with a general surge in the market, which is more global, and it is largely multiple expansion that's been happening. So I would be cautious about it, and I would basically look at banks that can continue to benefit in the current scenario when the slowdown happens in the second half. So growth area, and it's a growth sector, and typically I'm expecting growth to slow down in the second half of the year. So banks will also find it challenging to grow the balance sheet, and also you already have a competitive pressure that is emanating across the board.
Okay, very interesting press release from NDTV. Remember there's a stake buy that Adani is doing. Now, remember this, of course, the NDTV promoters are fighting this case, but there's a SEBI restriction on the promoters of NDTV to deal in their own securities. So they're saying that, Adani will need SEBI approval if they have to go through and buy this, because, this would mean, this is a promoter entity, and if to buy it, the 2-year period expires on November 26, 2022. So there's still going to be a lot that could happen here. Any views on this deal, Dhananjay, or on the media sector?
See, I don't have a view on the deal, so I would want to refrain as well. So I have not really studied it well, but generally, I would say media does well in a scenario that we are looking at. So if there is a kind of a slowdown that happens in the second half as we are looking at it, media generally does well. So the thing is, right now, what we are seeing is, especially with various consumption space, there is a considerable amount of improvement, especially in FMCG and auto space. We are expecting commodity prices to come off. So we have been overweight on consumer space. And typically when such things happen, margins expand and consumer companies start allocating more towards A&P and advertisement, etc. So typically the media space, including the print media, benefits from such situation of a cycle. So I would say that I'm sort of constructive in that space.
Okay, all right. A lot is happening in the renewable energy space. I wanted your views on that. But before asking you about it, we also have a management joining in, which is in focus on the back of several new projects. That's NHPC. They have signed an MOU with the Rajasthan government for development of 10 gigawatts renewable energy